for 2022, is Texas back more likely, or is Sark gone more likely? Now, to me, this didn't take long to answer. Like, I was trying to envision a scenario where Sark was gone. Outside of scandal, I don't even know how that would happen. I mean, Texas could bomb this year and go, let's say 5-7. That was what they were, I think, last year. 5-7 again. I don't think he'd be fired. He'd certainly be in a lot of, trouble, if you want to call it that. He'd be under a lot of pressure. I don't think he'd be gone. Especially when you factor in percentage-wise what the odds are that they're back this year. And by back, I think we're talking about Big 12 championship contention. I think there's a much greater chance of that. Let's remember what's happening there. You've got the number one quarterback in America from 2 recruiting cycles ago now. You've got him on campus. Presumably he'll be your starter. Maybe that means a lot this year, maybe it doesn't, but it certainly doesn't mean nothing. They recruited very well along the lines of scrimmage this past recruiting cycle. They've gotten a ton of influx of talent from the transfer portal. How all that gels remains to be seen. Yes, we all understand that. But there are reasons to be a lot more optimistic this year than there were last year. So certainly you could have it just not come together. We could end up finding out that this staff wasn't what we thought it would be. It's way too early to know either way, I think. But then thirdly, you could take all that and you could take the most negative of potential scenarios. I think there are far more likely paths where Texas is a 9 or 10 win team than they are a 5-win team this upcoming year. Now keep in mind, they open with UL Monroe, but they've got Alabama in there in week 2. Now that Alabama game could go a number of different ways. That could be a 49-13 drubbing, or it could be a 38-31 loss. I mean, of course they could pull the upset, but even if they lose to Alabama, there are different ways they could lose that game, which goes back to one of the big lies in football. You are what your record says you are, not all the time. And, a win is a win. A loss is a loss. That's not always the case either. So that week 2 in college football with Texas hosting Alabama, we'll learn a lot there. But I'll also tell you this now. Probably whenever that Bo Davis rant happened, week 10, week 11 last year, remember how there were 2 camps. But really, Camp 1 was pretty small and Camp 2 was pretty large. Camp 1 was, this is just indicative of a bigger mess at Texas. But that wasn't breaking news. That was already there. You had brought in a new staff to try and rectify that, and they didn't have pixie dust, so it didn't happen overnight. But what you saw for the first time is you saw someone with that Longhorn logo on his chest calling out that mess during a season, and because someone had a cell phone rolling, you got to witness it. Camp 2, which was disproportionately larger than Camp 1, didn't laugh at it. And Camp 2 didn't criticize it. Camp 2 said, well, good for Bo Davis, first off. That guy's been at Alabama. He's been around championship teams. He knows what it looks like, and he knows what he's seeing right now is not that. And then I loved the following week how Sark didn't apologize for it. If anything, he endorsed it because everything that was said was true. And from that point, I bookmarked that. I talk about it a lot on the show still. I bookmarked that moment because I said, all right, well, those are the words. We certainly heard the right words said there, and I don't doubt he felt them, and I don't doubt that staff feels them. Let's see how much of the roster they can turn over. Well, then we got into that season, and they overturned a big chunk of it. And they did bring in a top 5 recruiting class. So everything that you would want to have happen from that point moving forward so far has happened, right? Even above and beyond your expectation because you ended up getting Quinn Ewers too. Just got to understand, time does march on, but it doesn't always march on at the pace you want it to march on at. So if Texas is a 7 or an 8 win team this year, that doesn't mean it's throwaway time. Hopefully we don't have to worry about that. But if you see progress, if you see little saplings sprouting up, sometimes that's what it looks like. Sometimes that's what growth as a program looks like. But I think there is, to answer the question, a far more likely chance that we're looking at Texas at the December 2020 mark and saying, hey, I kind of think they're back, than we are saying, wow, who's Texas about to hire as their next head coach?